Notre Dame fans know the feeling all too well. Another crushing loss at home on a big stage, this time to Texas A&M. Let's talk about what went wrong, what needs fixed, and where Marcus Freeman's team goes from here. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. Today is Tuesday, September 16th, and thanks for starting your day right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Look, I know it hasn't been a super fun start to the year, but I really do appreciate everyone who continues to tune in despite Notre Dame's 0-2 start, and you can help us out by hitting that subscribe button if you have not already on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And today, I'm in a little bit better mood than I was on Sunday evening when I recorded my reaction episode following Notre Dame's loss to Texas A&M. I think that came through in my tone, in my voice, and all of that. But today, I'm going to be joined by my good friend Luke Smith to do what we always do on Tuesdays. And today we're going to unpack Notre Dame's heartbreaking loss to Texas A&M. We'll start with our honest look on where this team and this season stand. Then we're going to dive into the three things that we absolutely did not like, especially the defensive performance under Chris Ash. And then we're going to pivot to what gives us hope moving forward. We don't individually have three things that we like from this game, which is our normal segment on Tuesdays, but I do believe that there are some reasons to be optimistic about how this Irish team can rebound and get things back on track, from Mike Denbrock's offensive creativity to the steady progress of CJ Carr, and of course, the star running backs, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Enjoy. All right, Luke, here we are again in a very familiar situation, here to talk about another crushing loss by the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You and I were both in attendance. Everything was going great throughout the weekend. I honestly was having an incredible time in South Bend. The game, the atmosphere, it was all living up to the hype, and then everything just sort of crumbled and collapsed in the last couple minutes of the game. But now that some time has passed, do you feel better, worse, or about the same about the game now compared to the immediate aftermath when you and I were together?
Oh, well, definitely better from the immediate aftermath, I would say. That was
low bar to clear.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It's I'd say probably the only time I've had a similar feeling to how I felt after Ohio State. So yeah, that was definitely not a great feeling. And Ohio State in 2023, to be clear, not the national championship game. But I think now I'm less concerned about, like, what does this mean? Where are we? And rather just like, I'd like to start to see this team start to clean some things up and start playing better again, start playing what I envision them to play as, because for all intents and purposes, they are out of the spotlight for the next 3 months now. I mean, probably for the rest of the season, but there's still a lot they can figure out. And it's a younger team that has an ability to kind of sort some things out. And I'd like to see that. And more than anything, I'd like to see them win a game, because it's been a while. It's been since January 9th. So it's been a minute.
It's been a long time since this team won a game, and I really hope that they're able to get over the hump against Purdue. They should, despite some injuries, but I'm with you. I've tried to avoid the national discourse about where Notre Dame should be ranked, because they are ranked in the AP poll despite the 0-2 start. Some people had some thoughts about that, and then people were debating, is Notre Dame dead as it relates to the college football playoff? Look, it's not looking great. But I do think there is a world where Notre Dame, if they do end up finishing 10-2, could make the college football playoff. But right now, talking about this team as if it's just a guarantee that they're going to rattle off 10 straight wins seems like a stretch. So I think we should just kind of focus on the here and now, what went wrong against Texas A&M, what they need to clean up going forward. So what is the main thing that you did not like from the loss on Saturday?
This is how I felt coming out of Miami too, and honestly talking to some people even before the game, and the whole vibe of how that game unfolded really just fed into this, but everything just seems off. And I don't really know how best to articulate this, but there's just an unease. They don't seem to have a ton of leadership, and I actually felt a little bit better when I walked into the stadium and I saw them jawing at Texas A&M a little bit. I saw some people call that performative. I definitely didn't feel that way. That felt like they finally got their edge back a little bit, and then that really, I thought in the first few minutes of the game, you block a punt and you're up 7-0 already. Your defense has a good first drive. You're feeling pretty good, but everything else seems off, and I'm just wondering, like, should we have seen some of these signs? Obviously, you lose an all-time great in Xavier Watts. You also lose guys like Jack Kaiser, half of Howard Cross last year, because that's really what they had, and then Riley Mills pre-Georgia. But I think if you look back at Notre Dame last year, they played a bunch of really terrible quarterbacks, okay? Like, I mean, bad quarterbacks. And they did sort of get torched by USC in the last game of the regular season. Now, the difference is they made some plays on defense. Christian Gray made one, and Xavier Watts, of course, made a big one as well. But then after that, they beat up on a bad Georgia offensive line, and honestly, in that game, were helped by some drops. Sneaky got kind of torn up on the ground by Penn State before Ohio State did what they did. But it's like I'm starting to think, like, oh, is this just, like, did I miss this? But I don't think that's it. And something seems off. And the way that I best feel about this is that Marcel Reed is a quarterback that Notre Dame routinely made look horrible the last 2 years. Terrible. And honestly, he still kind of was bad the other night, despite throwing for 360, which is a crazy thing to say. But it's not often that you see a guy have 20 incompletions and 17 completions and he throws for 360 yards. But that's what happened. And it's alarming how significant that drop-off is on defense, and I do think it kind of stems to this just feeling of things being off, and maybe the bigger problem is there's a clear lack of leadership.
I'm with you on things being off, although I don't really know how much carryover there is between the vibes of the program today compared to last year. I do think Notre Dame had some things go their way during the regular season. They had a much easier schedule last season than they have this year in terms of the quarterbacks they play and just kind of where teams were at. But in the end, like, the team just had a vibe around them. They made plays, and they had a ton of momentum with that winning streak. And I think once things go wrong and you lose a game, then all of a sudden people are pointing fingers. And I would honestly say there's a little bit too much finger pointing going on the Notre Dame sideline, on the field. We saw that a lot during the secondary. We're going to talk about Chris Ash. But I think the vibes are off just because they lost a game. Like, the vibes were really bad last year during September because we were still feeling the weight of the NIU loss, and that was just so embarrassing. And Notre Dame was a laughing stock basically for a few weeks until they just started dominating a bunch of teams. So I do understand that the vibes are off, but I just think it's a product of they went up against a good Miami team on the road. They had a chance to win that game. They didn't play like we expected them to, but they lost. And when you're losing, man, nothing feels right.
That's true for sure. But I don't know. There's some things happening out there that don't feel like they happened in the past. Namely, receivers going 80 yards untouched. I mean, that's something I haven't seen since I was like a sophomore in college, and when Brian Van Gorder was the defensive coordinator. I heard somebody say that I think there have been like 75 games since the last time that Notre Dame had let up 41 points in regulation, and it was that Michigan game in the monsoon, which doesn't even really count if you ask me. Everything about that was just messed up. But I've been at there's probably single digit games within that stretch of 75 that I haven't been at, and I do not remember seeing anything like that in the last half decade plus.
It was pretty embarrassing, but also just sort of inexplicable. And one of the things that I want to get to here, the first thing that really stands out to me about the things I don't like is the players that we know are good, that we have seen perform at a high level, are regressing or certainly not playing up to their caliber, to how we have seen them play before. And look, obviously, Chris Ash is the defensive coordinator, and what has happened to that defense? Like, Ash does deserve a ton of blame for the demise of the Notre Dame defense through 2 games. But when I was watching this game back, I realized that there are some guys that just have to play better. And yeah, there might be some plays where they're confused and things like that, but let's go through it. Christian Gray is a shell of himself right now. I understand he is hurt, but just his effort on that play when Mario Craver went 86 yards for a touchdown. Like, I don't know what Jalen Stroman was doing on that play, but Christian Gray has him on the sideline. It's one-on-one, and it could go from being a touchdown to just a big chunk play. And at this point, they're not even in field goal range yet. He doesn't get low at all. He just puts his head down and just tries to bump him, tries to bump him out of bounds. But that was a pathetic effort. Again, I understand he's hurt, but if you can't even do that, if you can't even tackle a guy or at least push him out of the bounds, you can't be in the game. So Christian Gray has regressed from last year. Adon Schuler is not making plays. He missed 2 huge tackle for loss opportunities in this game, also had a chance at a pick, did not make the play. Carson Hobbs is a player who didn't play last season, but looked pretty good in the spring, especially in that spring game. Thought he could do something this season. He was unplayable against A&M.
Not play.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Devontae Smith is out for an injury, so Notre Dame doesn't have another option. Drake Bowen is leading the team in tackles, but if you really watch him closely, he's not the same player that we saw at the end of last season. The entire defensive line looks average at best, including guys we had really high expectations for, like Boubacar Traore, like Bryce Young. Honestly, the only defensive lineman who I can really point to and say that guy is playing his ass off and is making some plays is Junior Tuialamaka, who was third string last year. And they brought a bunch of guys back on both sides of the ball, but I think on defense, the fact that these guys are just not playing up to the standard is really concerning.
It's definitely concerning. The regression has been real. I don't think Drake Bowen, he didn't have a great game against Miami. I thought, honestly, he was pretty okay against A&M. Now everybody's going to remember the touchdown at the end. I think that was an unfortunate circumstance. He should not have been in on that play. That's got to be Kingston Viliamu-Asa out there, which outside of Leonard Moore, I feel like Kingston Viliamu-Asa is probably the only guy that hasn't regressed. And you do have to wonder, I've mentioned the lack of leadership. I wonder a little bit if there's a little bit of questioning the coaching that's going on, because, it's clear that they're questioning where they're supposed to be and how sure of themselves they are out there. But even think about this, there was some just typical message board scuttlebutt type stuff. Is this quarterback decision going to rupture the locker room a little bit? Because a lot of folks felt like Kenny Minchie had won the competition. Now, obviously, that was the right decision to go with CJ Carr. He's been terrific. No doubt about that. But you got to wonder, does that beg some questions? Like, what's coach doing? And then you got Chris Ash, who come in. Doesn't seem like the players are comfortable with his scheme. So you just have to wonder, there's no leaders to step up and say, hey guys, the standard is the standard. This is what we are meant to do. This is what we're going to do. And you just got to wonder if there's a lot of questions, because that's kind of what it looks like out there.
Luke is going to be right back here with us in a second to talk about the harsh reality facing Notre Dame with Chris Ash as the defensive coordinator. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Prize Picks, because you and I make decisions every day. But on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 or 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. I've been playing Prize Picks lately, and it is such a fun way to stay locked in for the season. It's quick, easy, and honestly, my favorite way to follow along with football. I love checking projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. And the best part, even if one of your picks misses, Prize Picks invented the flex play so you can still double your money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. There's a lot of questions on the field, and you can tell by the way that players are reacting before the snap. Guys are looking around. They don't look like they know where to be or what their assignment is on that specific play based on the look that they're getting. And then after these chunk plays, they're pointing at each other again. Sometimes they're pointing to the sideline like they don't know what they have to do or what they should have done on a play. And I think a lot of that responsibility falls on Chris Ash. Now, Notre Dame is in a predicament because I don't think you can fire a defensive coordinator after 2 games, even though what Ash has done so far has not been good. I'm not making an excuse for Chris Ash, but I think that if Marcus Freeman were to decide after 2 games to fire a defensive coordinator, that sets a bad precedent. And I think other coaches around the country would look at that situation and think, do I really want to go to Notre Dame? Because if things go poorly in 2 games, I could be on the outs. Again, it's a really interesting spot for Marcus Freeman. And there were questions about Chris Ash when he was hired because you're thinking Notre Dame could have probably hired any defensive coordinator in the country coming off a national championship appearance and what the previous defensive coordinators have ended up doing in their careers. But I felt like we needed to give Marcus Freeman the benefit of the doubt because he's been great at hiring coaches up to this point. I mean, people didn't even love the Al Golden hire. That ended up working out great for him and the program. But it's a really difficult spot for Marcus Freeman and this defensive coaching staff. But there's also a lot of returning staff members from before. So I don't know what they do going forward with Chris Ash, but if things do get worse, then Marcus Freeman might have no other choice but to make a decision about Chris Ash's future during midseason.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with that. I do think that they're going to sort some things out, but in order to sort things out, they need to find a killer mentality or the violence that they played with last year, because that's another thing, just going to the sense of things being off. Notre Dame had a double-digit lead for a good chunk of this game, and I think they just missed some opportunities to put this game away. And at one point, they had a chance to go up 21-7 in maybe it was the first quarter even, but they had to settle for 3 and only went up 17-7, let up a quick score. The end of the first half was just a disaster, and really that whole game, I'm thinking in the first half, oh, this is going to be great. Notre Dame's going to get the ball here. They're going to go up 2 scores right before half, and they're going to get the ball back. A&M can't stop us. We're going to go up 3 scores. Instead, they find themselves trailing. And it's so strange because there was another opportunity where they did get a stop when they were up a touchdown, and then they just couldn't add on. And I never felt like Notre Dame was going to lose this game until the muff snap. And then I was certain that they would. And that is not a feeling I would have had with last year's group. Last year's group was so good. I mean, think about how good that defense was, even when the offense was just like scuffling, even into November in some games, couldn't score for extended period of times. They're like, it's all good. We got you. Like, we're not going to let up a first down for the next hour. And they're lacking that this year big time, and that needs to get sorted out, because I just refuse to believe that all of that ability went out the door with the departure of Xavier Watts and Al Golden.
Think about how different the conversation about the Notre Dame defense would be today if Carson Hobbs had just caught that interception in the end zone to ice the game. Because if that were to happen, Notre Dame would have gone through the entire second half giving up 6 total points. Now, the second quarter was a disaster. They gave up 21 points in that quarter alone. That can't happen in any game, let alone a home game. But I do think the defense did improve for the most part in the second half. They only allowed 3 points in the third quarter. They gave up a field goal in the fourth, but then they drove down the field at the end. They were gifted a holding penalty courtesy of Christian Gray, and I'm not saying that was a bad call by the refs. Christian Gray absolutely held him on that play. But the defense did show signs of improvement, but they did not come up with a critical play, and that is the difference between this year's defense and last year's, amongst a bunch of other things. That is the difference in these wins and losses, because they had a chance against Miami to come up with a big stop late. They didn't do it. They allowed a field goal. They had a chance to come up with a stop in this game. They didn't do it. They allowed a touchdown on the very last play, despite a pretty valiant effort, man. They almost had like a goal line stand for the ages in some regards, even though they got pushed back because of the false start penalties. But you think back to last year, the defense came up with a big play against Penn State. Christian Gray's interception. Georgia, they shut that offense down the entire second half. USC, Christian Gray came up with a big play, and then Xavier Watts followed it up. So maybe, to your point earlier, yeah, the defense last year might have been benefited by the fact that they were going up against some weak quarterbacks, but the difference was they made plays, and this group just is not making them in the biggest moments.
No, they're absolutely not making plays. I mean, they have 1 sack in 2 games, and they had, 2 tackles for loss. It's strange. And I don't understand it, but I do think it stems from a passivity that they seem to be playing with, particularly up front, and a lack of willingness to send pressure for whatever reason. And that's making it a lot harder for the defensive backs too. It just seems like it has to. And the thing that I really just hate, I don't want to say they've lost all of it, but man, they've lost almost all momentum from 2024 by September 13th. And that is just not something I thought I'd be saying, but man, I'm saying it.
All the good vibes from this offseason feel like they've gone out the door. Now, they could come back if this team goes out, they handle business against Purdue, they beat Arkansas, they get a winning streak, and they go out and they beat USC. Things are going to start to shift, but in order for that to happen, we're going to need to see some big sweeping changes on defense, and specifically that killer instinct that you're talking about. Like, the fact that this team and this defense has only had 4 tackles for loss through 2 games is just inexcusable. And look, yes, part of that is on the scheme. They need to be more creative because last year, they didn't have their top edge guys, and Al Golden still found a way to confuse offenses and have free rushers. And that's just not happening right now, and I don't know how that's going to get fixed.
I don't either. Golden had an innate ability to really marry pressure with coverage, and Ash seems to be completely non-adept at that right now. So we'll see what happens, but man, it hasn't been pretty in the first 2 games.
Pete Sampson from The Athletic put out a tweet saying that Notre Dame has rushed for a bunch of these first 2 games, and they have only gotten pressure on 7.5% of those attempts. And considering how much Marcus Freeman has preached that through 2 games and how they need to get pressure with 4 guys, literally every defense at every single level of football would love to get pressure with 4 guys, but it's just not happening right now, except for the final play of the game, or at least the game-winning touchdown, when Donovan Heinisch got through. And for all of Donovan Heinisch's faults, one thing he's good at, getting after the passer. He cooks the center and the guard, and he gets straight up tackled. And I want to talk about that holding call because we all understand that Notre Dame should not have put themselves in a position where one call is going to change the outcome of the game. But that is what happened. And the more I see this play, the more egregious it is. The fact that so many people have come out, like Booger McFarland, John Gruden, just to name a couple of guys who came out and said, that is an absolutely inexcusable miss by the officials. And the fact that it was an SEC crew in a game where Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, was there, certainly does not help the vibes around the situation. I'm not saying that it was like a calculated move by the SEC, but that cannot happen in that moment. And it's not like the officials were keeping the flags in their pockets. They had the false starts. They called the holding on Christian Gray, which was deserved. But this holding, this missed holding, was just as bad, if not worse, than all those other calls. And the fact that they didn't call that is pretty disgusting. And the implications are massive because now it's 4th and 21 as opposed to 4th and 11. And it literally, I think, changes the outcome of the game. Notre Dame did a bunch of things wrong that put themselves in that spot, but that missed call cannot happen. And it honestly could end up changing the course of this entire season.
Well, yep. And they did it twice because that targeting should never, ever get called either. And without that, Notre Dame gets a stop on 3rd down. Marcel Reed's off the field for a play. And unfortunately, Schuler gets kicked out of the game, and now he's out for a half because we just don't know how to officiate anymore. But it doesn't make me feel any better to see, all this commentary. What I will say is that I just hope that it basically diminishes how people view this victory for Texas A&M because I really don't want them to be able to celebrate that because Notre Dame, I thought, was the better team for the entire night. And somehow, some way, they didn't come out on top. And it's really unfortunate. It's not like the Miami game where I felt like Notre Dame really didn't deserve to win that game at all. This one, it felt like it honestly took 7 crazy events where you had 3 dropped picks, you had a terrible targeting call, a terrible missed holding call, even the Christian Gray holding call. And then you even had the weird thing at the end of the first half where good to see that guy in Texas A&M was okay, but Notre Dame was moving the ball up and down. They were going to score before we had a 20-minute break there. So I don't know, just it took all those events. And how could I forget the muff snap that actually made the difference in the game? And that was the difference in a 1-point game. And Man, it was as I was sitting there on that last drive, and like I said, that whole drive, I'm thinking there's no way Notre Dame wins this game. I was thinking this is what hell must feel like, because this is truly just the most hellacious experience I've had in a long time.
It had flashbacks to Ohio State 2023, and this is the last thing I didn't like. We've hit all the things. There's a bunch of things we didn't like from this one, but the last thing I want to mention here is that it felt like another all-time night in Notre Dame Stadium that was just completely wasted, because the atmosphere for this game was incredible. It was one of the best I have seen inside Notre Dame Stadium. You got to give a ton of credit to all the Notre Dame fans who were there. They were loud from the jump. They stayed loud. When Tay Johnson had that touchdown after the block punt, like, things just fell back, and you're thinking, okay, if Notre Dame is able to build off this momentum, they could have a big win. And then all the vibes that you were talking about earlier, how things just kind of fell off, that could have all changed if Notre Dame had just taken care of business. But the last drive, especially after that botched snap, it was inevitable. Like, when it was fourth down, I was just thinking there's a 100% chance that they score on this play, and it's not going to make any sense. And sure enough, they did. I just had no faith in that moment. The crowd was still super loud on that play. Like, I did just want to give some credit to all the Irish fans who were there. They stepped up in the end, but the defense did not.
Yeah, no, definitely. They created a good atmosphere. Somehow it wasn't enough. And yeah, it hurts a lot. There's just not a whole lot else I can add about this, other than I just can't believe that all those events unfolded the way that they did.
Luke is going to be right back here with us in a second, and we're going to switch up the vibes. We're going to be a little bit more positive and talk about the things we did like from Notre Dame's performance against Texas A&M and what gives us hope moving forward. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app makes it super simple. You can see the exact view from your seat before buying, and I love the zone deals too. You just pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. And if you're looking for tickets for Notre Dame's upcoming home game against Purdue, you got to check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Normally, when we do this show, we start off with the 3 things we liked and 3 things we didn't, but that is not going to be the case. Also, I don't have 3 additional things that I liked in this one, but I do believe that we saw some things in this game, some performances that really stood out that do give me reasons for hope, reasons to be optimistic that maybe this team can get off the map. But what is the one thing that stands out to you in that regard?
I mean, it's Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. When those guys have 215 all-purpose yards and 4 touchdowns between the two of them, you should never lose a game. It's absurd that Notre Dame lost the game with that, and that doesn't even take into account CJ Carr's night, which I know you want to get into. But those guys are just so good, and it does feel like Notre Dame's wasting an all-time backfield. And I'm just glad that they got out all the Jeremiah Love stuff on the Jumbotron the other night, because, I mean, that Heisman campaign's dead now 2 weeks in, which sucks. But they definitely had some cool stuff. It was a great atmosphere when he scored. He has the incredible one-handed catch. Scores too early, unfortunately, on the run, which I'm joking about, but I did feel that way when it happened. And, man, it's just we're still going to get to watch them the rest of this year, but, man, these guys kind of deserve better is how I feel about it.
Jeremiah Love absolutely deserves better in that game. And you know what I felt like when Texas A&M was returning that kick for a touchdown right after the botched snap? The thought went through my mind, I kind of wish there wasn't a flag. I would actually be okay with
now,
that returning this to kick.
He did tackle the guy. But
yeah, yes. It was an obvious hold, but I was thinking,
miss that tackle.
Is this the worst thing? Do I have more faith in the offense to drive down the field and kick a game-winning field goal, or do I trust the defense to get a stop here? In that moment, I trusted the offense a little bit more.
Crazy.
But the reason why I trusted the offense so much more is because of Mike Denbrock's play calling in this game. And I'm also going to talk about CJ Carr, but I did want to give some love to Denbrock. I felt like he was in his bag during this one. Was it a perfect game? I know some people have some questions about the Wildcat and when they deployed that in the game. But I really thought he called an outstanding game. Like that flea flicker, that non-traditional flea flicker, I should say, that ended up being a huge chunk play to Eli Raridon. Great play design there. I thought overall the offense was explosive, dynamic, and balanced against one of the best defensive minds in all of college football. Like Notre Dame put up 33 points, should have been 34 points on offense against Mike Elko, who is widely regarded as one of the best defensive minds. And for all the deserved criticism that Mike Denbrock got after the way he called the Miami game, he made adjustments. They weren't running it nearly as much RPO. They fed Jeremiah Love the ball, career high in carries with 23, and that looked like the offense we expected to see at the beginning of the season. Obviously, it helps when your offensive line steps up, but they improved in a big way. But I feel a lot better about this offense going forward than I did after the Miami game, and that's one thing that gives me hope.
Yeah, definitely. I think he did a great job, and especially did a great job considering apparently A&M knew what was coming, pass or run every play, and they still couldn't stop it, which I don't even know. I guess I believe it, but man, if you knew that, you really did a terrible job, Elko. But anyways, yeah, I think he did a good job, and I do think the offensive line deserves a little bit more credit than they're probably getting, or they're getting overshadowed because of the atrocities that the defense committed. But yeah, I think they had a good game too.
Yeah, and for people who are not aware, it's been pretty widely reported at this point that CJ Carr was tipping off plays at the snap because when he lined in just a straight up stance with his feet parallel to each other, that was going to be a run play. And when he had a staggered stance, it was going to be a pass play. And that was true on 58 of 64 snaps from CJ Carr. So the fact that they were basically giving away the play and still had as much success as they did on offense. I mean, what did they finish here? They had 440 total yards of offense, 293 passing, and then another 147 on the ground. They won the time of possession battle 33 to 26 minutes. So, yeah, it was a really good performance by the offense and specifically CJ Carr. And if you watch or listen to Marcus Freeman's press conference on Monday, honestly, he basically just said the word execution over and over and over again. He's not going to throw any of his coaching staff or his players under the bus, nor should he. But the only positive thing that Marcus Freeman really had to say in his press conference was about CJ Carr. Said he's been playing really well, and he mentioned multiple times that he's going to be really special for the Irish. And through 2 games, I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him. He threw for nearly 300 yards in this game, but more specifically, he threw 10 passes over 20 or more yards, and he completed 50% of those, which is a good number because those are not high percentage plays, finished with 149 yards. And if he continues to get better, he could be really good by the end of the season. It's just a matter of can the rest of the team follow that same trajectory so that at the end of the season, they are in the mix and they have a really good quarterback to lead them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be great to watch his growth. I mean, who knows where this season's going to go at this point, but that is definitely something you can continue to monitor. And I do think it'll continue to progress positively. It's nice to have a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield. It's been a minute. So I'm definitely eager to watch him and see how he grows this year. But yeah, 2 strong performances. And really, like, this is a rookie QB that in his first game led a game-tying drive, and in his second game led a game-winning drive, and the defense cannot hold up their end of the bargain. We should be talking about him so much more glowingly and differently if the defense had a pulse, and that's really disappointing.
Is there anything else that gives you optimism going forward, or anything else you like from this game?
I got to give my guy James Rendell a shout out because he often has been a character on this show that I've questioned. I've wondered what's going on, but he only had 2 punts, but they were both phenomenal. One inside the 20, one that went down to like the 1-yard line, and I think he had a really nice game. So shout out to James Rendell. I honestly wanted to say special teams as a whole, but you can't because what happened. So, anyways,
I mean, hey, Noah Burnett. 2 of 2,
yep.
Connected on some big kicks late when they really needed him. Now, apparently, he hurt his right hip. He was in the Notre Dame injury report. I don't know how that happened because he looked fine when he was out there. He looked fine on the play that Tyler Buckner dropped the snap. I mean, he ran to the other sideline, looked like he was moving all right. And also, how does Notre Dame have 2 place kickers in back-to-back years who are dealing with hip injuries? Because if Mitch Cheaters wasn't a hip, it was a groin. But
I think it was a groin.
Yeah, that leads me to some questions because when do kickers ever get hurt unless they're on the kickoff team, which Noah Burnett is not. So it's not like he's running down there trying to tackle guys. So I don't know what's happening there, but that's definitely something to monitor going forward.
Yeah, that is strange. But yeah, best wishes to him. Hopefully he's out there this week, but we'll see.
All right. Any final thoughts on this game or where Notre Dame is headed after this before we turn the page to Purdue?
Not really. I don't really know where they're headed, to be honest. And I'd like to see them start playing better, especially defensively. I'd like to see them win a game. Like I said at the start of the show, that's pretty much all I'm here for at this point. Just win a game.
I agree. Just on Saturday, just win, man. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it really has. But I'm confident that'll happen, and then I'm sure we can start to find some more good with this group.
All right. Well, win or lose, Luke, we will see you back here on the show next week. Also want to give a shout out to the guy at the backer that found us. And honestly, that might have been the highlight of my entire weekend. So at least we had that.
Yeah, I think Jack, I believe that was your name. Really nice to meet you. And pretty much, as you can tell, I'm pretty much pissed off about everything today, so.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and starting your day by making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Also, leave a like and rate and review. Don't forget, I'm going to be doing another Friday mailbag, so drop your questions in the YouTube comments or send them to me on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. Also, I'd encourage you to check out Locked On's college football kickoff show every Thursday, only available on Fire TV. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow with a full preview of Notre Dame's upcoming matchup with Purdue. We're going to turn the page, and until then, keep the faith, Irish fans. We'll talk tomorrow.